Hi, everybody. It's time to get back to being all nerdy and what have you. So let's give a big round of applause for our next speakers, Heidi and Kim.
Hi, everyone. All right. So, Heidi and I are both poets. And we were just wondering a while ago because, poets have this thing where we kind of tend to flock together. So, we're wondering, like, what do you call a flock of poets? So, do us a favor and think about that. And at the end of the show, if you have any good ideas, like, we're open. Because there are other poets in the audience tonight, too. They want to know. So, we were thinking about an ode to Poe, going, well, do we want to name ourselves after ravens? But that's called an unkindness. And so we were like, well, maybe that's not like the best. And then my husband was like, well, how about a depression or a poverty? So, no offense, Craig, but yeah, no. Okay. So, all right. So, Heidi, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. I am Heidi Kasa. I am a poet and a writer of fiction, and I've won awards for my fiction and poetry, and I have a book of flash fiction coming out next year and a book of poetry coming out next year. I also am an editor. I copy edit and proofread for all kinds of things, mostly nonfiction, though, these days, healthcare, business, and textbooks. And I also work as an author assistant, so I help authors who need some help with marketing or their websites or research and submissions. And you, Kim?
All right. Well, as you can see up here in my bio, I'm also a poet, and I've been featured in print and digital anthologies. I was nominated for a Pushcart Prize. I haven't yet published my own book, but now that I know an editor, maybe that can happen. I'm also a consultant, so I do leadership development and just kind of help people become better people in the workplace. And I am also an advocate and an activist for public education, specifically where equity is concerned in public ed. And I'm also a curandera, following in the ancestral footsteps of my abuelas, my grandmothers. And so what I do as a curandera is I'm a shamanic practitioner, so I help people heal and grow and basically fix their bullshit, and while fixing mine as well. So tonight, we are following Russell's very interesting and amazing presentation, which was awesome. I love, Russell, how you talked about all these systems that need to be totally just like destroyed or burned down. And, I love how you were talking about how we can use community organizing and also political structures if we organize well enough to try to knock those things down. So I can tell you, though, that as an activist, that sometimes we feel like even when we've moved the needle, we end up taking or getting pushed several steps backwards sometimes, especially where public education is concerned. And it can be really frustrating. So what do you do with those feelings when you know that there's shit that needs to be knocked down and you're feeling sometimes a little powerless? What do you do with those feelings? And for people like me, those feelings, the catharsis, the getting rid and the kind of purging of those feelings comes out through poetry. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about with y'all tonight, is that cathartic process. And we're going to show you examples of how both Heidi and I have done this in serious ways and also not so serious ways.
And then after we have some poetry examples, we're also going to lead you through a short writing exercise. But don't worry, we'll give you easy guidelines to support being free and trying it out. We'll also ask some questions and give you some ideas to start with. And then we'll take a few minutes to write. Kim will lead us through closing, and then we'll have a Q&A if there's time.
All right. So y'all didn't know you were going to participate tonight, did you? It's okay. The alcohol helps. All right. So option one, we're going to show you two ways to do this. How do you knock shit down through words? So one way, the first way, is the more serious way. And this is when we keep it real. And this is kind of my forte. I have a tendency to write in a way that is in your face, or like I said, just kind of striking a match and trying to burn it all down, like a Molotov cocktail made out of words. But that's not always artful. Okay, it's not always playful the way poetry can be. So it's just kind of like when you start off writing that way, it just feels like you're just kind of vomiting like all your crap onto a page. That's more like just journal writing. By the way, if you don't do journal writing, it's really awesome to just do that, get all your crap out on the page. And hopefully in a place where no one can see it, and let's hope that it's not like serial killer shit you're writing in there, because eventually somebody will see it, just a warning. But if it's just like you just want to get all the crap out, writing is a great way to do it. The beautiful thing about poetry is that you can play games with the words, and you can wrap your words. You can wrap the blades and the matches and the Molotovs and all the things. You can wrap them in words that are playful, or sometimes burn, but also look beautiful at the same time. And that's what I like about it. And, I can't speak for all the other poets out there, but you're going to hear what Heidi has to say about it for sure. And so let me give you the first example of how to keep it real this way. And this is a poem called Borderland Suburbia. Desert covered in deepest blue, in shadow of a mountain that threw no shade, where houses grew out of sand and lawns forced their way through grains, and foreign trees rooted, tearing out the creosote, lifting fauna into stones. On that side of the freeway, where middle-class lightened skin, tangling Spanish tongues, washing color down slopes of the beige plateau toward the green line of the Rio. Things of this place, the heights, the woods, they pulled at my mother, pinching, threatening to rip her further from her brown. In this painting of a place of sun where darkness fades by de facto, and children must be either or. Because the plateau was a mesa, a goddamned Norman Rockwell of abundance, on the table of Americana inventions. Half-priced bargains and a fakery of choice. Until divorces came and rent signs appeared and choice became heartbreak. Yards browning in sun reclaiming to sand. Grit devouring the mortars of our crumbling walls that swept away in flashes of flood and rising heat and sliding breeze. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Apparently you did a beautiful job. That's amazing. Thank you. Okay, so this poem is about forced belongings. Kind of like those belongings that are forced sometimes by actual infrastructure, the way Russell was describing. And it's a commentary that calls out the social issues occurring in the place where I grew up, which was a middle-class neighborhood in the border city of El Paso, high up on a plateau, far from the Rio, separated from those neighborhoods by a freeway. This is a place where your neighborhood or the high school that you were zoned for sometimes says more about what people think of you and what they assume about you than who you really are. And it was a fairly rigid social structure back then. Can't speak for it now. An infrastructure of sorts of its own. It was constructed from the artifice of forced belongings. In this poem, I started talking about the frustration by describing the very place. So this is one way that you can do it. You can just describe the place. The blue shadows cast by the mountain at sunset, the lawns that shouldn't exist. I can smell the sand when I'm reading this poem. And I can smell the grit of crumbling rock walls, because one thing they do out there in the desert is surround yards with rock walls to keep sand and desert and the animals out. But what happens when you don't maintain them, or when there's no one left to do the maintaining of the walls, is that they start to crumble. I can smell the concrete. I can taste the concrete crumbling. The concrete walls and the rock walls that I used to play on as a child that started to crumble after divorce. And there were the names of the streets. Like, these places were ridiculously named. These streets were just absolutely ridiculous. Named after British Isles. Places in the UK out there in the middle of West Texas. But they wouldn't name the streets south of the freeway after British Isles, after all. Or manors and estates in the UK. I mean, here we were out there in far West Texas, living on streets named for genteelness. It was ridiculous. It was kind of crazy. We were in the desert, for crying out loud. So much of this imagery is the things that should not exist, and it gives the place a kind of magical quality. That's what I was going for. Like, what is real, but what is not real at the same time. And when I read it to myself, or I'm reading it out loud to you or to other people, I can't help but wonder sometimes where that magic ends and where the curse begins. And there's even a sense of smell in the line about the damned Rockwell painting. Do you guys remember the old Hickory Farm stores in the shopping malls? Anybody as old as me remember that? Remember the cheese smell when they used to give out samples? My God, that was the coolest place to go to when you were in the mall with your family. Like, it's kind of like how now kids want to go to Costco so they can eat all the samples. Like, it was like, we're going to Hickory Farms and we're going to eat all the cheese, right? So it's like that smell. Like, when I read that line to myself, I can smell the freaking Hickory Farm store in Cielo Vista Mall in El Paso, Texas. So that's kind of how you start. You just start with the sensations and the sensory parts of it. And so this is an example, like I said, of how you can call out and pick apart or just straight up knock down issues or situations in a serious way. But you have the luxury of wrapping your words. Like I said, you can wrap them up in beautiful phrases if you want to, or beautiful scenery. It doesn't have to be the big, scary Molotov cocktail that make people go, ooh, what are you writing? What's wrong with you? You okay? Do we need to get you on meds? Like it doesn't have to be like that if you really don't want it to be. That's the beautiful thing about poetry, is that you can hide your angst within the words. So I'm going to now turn it over, because we're on a limited time. I'm going to shut up for a second. By the way, I wanted to say also, Russell, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and talk, even though I said I'm going to shut up. I'm a poet. I want to speak. So, Russell, it's kind of like I was thinking about, like, the tombstone, right? Yeah, to the gate. There you go. That was poetry, dude. That was amazing. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Heidi, so Heidi can now show you an example of hers.
Thank you, Kim.
You're welcome.
I thought that was great, because you definitely showed us that there are times when you need to or want to confront an issue, and you showed one way, and it was very image rich, and I love it. Now, Kim and I are also, mothers of school-age children, and so we have talked about the environment of school shootings and how it daily has affected us and our kids. And so here's one poem I wrote facing up to this issue. So again, a serious example. The bullet cures. K-Ming Chang, bestiary. A bullet doesn't ask to be given back. K-Ming Chang, bestiary. The bullet asks to be the fire that melts it. The bullet asks to be given back, returned to the earth. To become a bridge, a garden gate, a plant liner, a tent enclosing instead of burying. A ring that keeps going and going, running from itself and into itself like wisdom, like love. The bullet asks to be the cure, to turn into the helmet saving a head from crushing, to create the structured bones of a man-made waterfall. The bullet wants to be a shield, to be shingles on a roof, provide cover. The bullet aches to serve a higher purpose, to be a wheelbarrow distributing seeds, to be the pin in your glasses, the tiny one that holds the whole thing together, to be as cold as an ice cream scoop, as warm as a pacemaker, to become what ticks in your watch. The bullet asks to crumble in pieces, to be delicate like lace or a spider web, to transform into the jar or the candle it holds, to flicker and fade slowly, liquefy as it's consumed, to live as an outdoor chair, abandoned, to die as one. Its rust, the dirt reclaiming its victim. The bullet wants to be the echo, not be echoed. The bullet wants to forget itself, to forget it was ever there. The bullet asks to rest, to rest, to rest. So I'm really working in opposites here. So I don't think bullets cure, but what would it be like if they wanted to? If bullets could be other things, have other uses, if we asked the bullet, what would it say to us? So letting the bullet speak is working with negative space. The soft quiet of this yearning to be other than what it is contrasts with what bullets do, what we use them for. The violence is hanging over this poem, these gentle images. So like Kim, I'm using imagery to show emotion and meaning. For me, it's mostly the pin in the glasses. It just has such a concrete feel to it. And also the abandoned, rusted outdoor chair. I'm using anaphora, which is repetition at the beginning of sentences. And this has the effect of disentangling what a bullet does and what a bullet is and does in reality. So I'm kind of intending you to question what you think a bullet is when you leave this poem. So when I think of how knocking it down is for me with this, it's not really like smashing a block tower, as a toddler, but it's more like destabilizing slowly and quietly, like when you're playing Jenga. So you're putting your finger to one piece at a time until it finally topples on its own. So if there is something that upsets you, you can be serious in writing about it, but you can lead with other emotions. Even if you feel anger and sadness, you can also lead with hope and wonder and see what that looks like for you. You can be directly angry, confront it, smash it down, or be more subtle. And you want to switch to the next one? You don't have to be serious or sad or angry or direct. You can make it absurd. Things that annoy you can be weird or funny or ridiculous. You can have fun with it. So the first example, Kim is going to say that she had a lot of fun with this annoyance.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, all right, so this is one that I wrote back when I was a high school teacher. I had to do duty. Every teacher has to do hall duty or whatever, and I had morning cafeteria duty that semester. And one Thursday morning, I got up a little bit too late and had a hard time dragging my butt out of bed. So I didn't have a good breakfast before I got to school, and I had to go to the cafeteria and watch the kids getting off the bus, going to the cafeteria, eating their breakfast before going on to class. And so I decided to go ahead and buy my breakfast at the school cafeteria. And I don't mean any disrespect to school cafeteria workers. These people perform a vital function, right? And they are not appreciated nearly as much as they should be. Their only flaw is that they're serving what the USDA basically says is food that is supposed to be suitable for our children, right? Okay, all right. So, by the way, this is an actual picture of the food that I ate that morning. All right. This is done in the classic sonnet structure. Ode to a school breakfast tray. You're a molded form, a vehicle of worth on a cold Thursday morn. Sustenance unearthed. A plastic cheese, a multi-grained chew. Oh, what food achieves when jellied with goo. A knife slice through patty, that's a little too smooth. The bread's a bit ratty, but a tummy it soothes. hunger presents a fine excuse. But did you know fruit punch is a juice? All right, so I wrote this purposely using the most basic sonnet structure that is taught in schools, right? And I wrote it, with my students in mind. Even though I wasn't an English teacher, I knew that they were doing this in one of their classes, and so I was like, I'm gonna have fun with it, and I'm gonna take all my anger about this, what they call food that's on the tray. I mean, I was seriously feeling like, what the shit are we feeding our kids? Like, this is disgusting. This is horrible. No wonder my students can't think all day and they ask for snacks and they're constantly eating in the classroom. Like, this is why, because this is the garbage that we in the United States deem worthy of our school children, who are supposed to someday be people who are brilliant enough to want to do the amazing things that y'all do in your daily lives, right? That's what we want them to do, but we're feeding them garbage. This is what we're putting in their bodies and their brains. And so that's what I was feeling. I was very angry that morning. And I was also thinking, well, no wonder some of them are misbehaving too. They're friggin' hungry, you know? Or, I mean, they had friggin' fruit juice or fruit punch instead of actual juice. So I was upset, just a little. And I get very passionate about things, I'm sorry. So I decided to make it kind of fun. And I wanted it to be something for my students, especially because they were high school students. They love sarcasm. They were working on assignments like this. I heard one student complaining about, I don't know how to write a stupid sonnet. And I told him, I said, you know, you don't have to write about like love and stuff like that, right? Like, you can write about anything you want to write. I'm pretty sure your teacher is going to be okay if you like write about anything. And I checked with her. I said, hey, I told one of your students that they could write about anything. And she was like, okay, you're good. Like, yeah, they can. So I was like, phew. Okay. So anyway, I was also just wanting to show them that like you can write about anything. And my anger from that morning just came out in this absurdity. It only took me maybe about 10 minutes to write. So the structure helped. So you can always lean into classic structures and then just kind of blow it apart with absurdity and stupidity. So it was a lot of fun. And that is my example. And I encourage you to try. Just be stupid. It works.
So for other things that are annoying and disgusting, has anyone ever been annoyed by porta potties? Has anyone ever not been annoyed by porta potties? So this is just one experience I had. Hell is definitely a porta potty in Texas. Let's be honest. It was never going to be a good time. The best we could hope for was quickness. And now I realize lots more shade than given by the skinny leaf tree looking on. Though at 105 degrees, what hope did we really have? My daughter barely made it there, too wiggly in her shorts for the heat, but she never stopped being herself, chatting incessantly, asking questions I really didn't want to answer, for then I'd have to open my mouth. While already dismayed, this was the tightest porta potty I'd ever seen. This porta potty must not have gotten the message from Texas about its one major advantage, space. Absolutely an experience requiring 2 showers afterward. So as you see, it doesn't have to be a major problem. Most people are also irritated by this. It's identifiable, relatable. You can knock down a small, silly structure, but please don't knock down a porta potty. That's gross. And you can lead with other parts of your personality. You can take a serious subject and make it absurd or funny or the opposite. You can take something light and approach it seriously. You can set the scene. So in this one, hell, connotes heat already. There's so much info in the title, setting the scene. You include key details that help people feel it, even if it's gross or uncomfortable, and sometimes, especially if it's gross or uncomfortable, you want those details. So 105 degrees, the tightest porta potty, people get what's happening here, right? So now, the next one, let's write it out together. So for our guidelines, as Kim passes out paper and pens, you don't need to work with trauma. You can. Poetry can be healing, but only go as deep as you want. Don't judge yourself. Let go and just write something. It can be poetry or prose, notes, images, anything you want to deal with right now or not deal with. If you're stuck, you can start with a feeling or a description. So we're going to ask you to write down 2 to 3 things that bother or annoy you. Then you can ask yourself some questions. What color does it make you think of? What does or would it sound like? What does or would it feel like? What does or would it taste like? So we're trying to get you to get your senses involved. And you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but we'd like you to just give it a try and have some fun with it.
So first, as Heidi said, the first thing you're going to do is just write down 2 to 3 things that bother you. Russell, you got this? Let's go back and go, just in case, because I was passing out paper, so some of you might have missed when Holly asked you to write down what color does it make you think of. So write down 2 to 3 things and then pick one of those. So that's usually how I have people start when I have to have them make a decision. I say, write down 2 to 3 things and then pick one. Like just circle it or whatever, underline it. And then like Holly was asking, look at that word that you wrote down or that phrase or that thing. What color does it make you think of?
And what does it remind you of? Is it your childhood, someone you know, an event, a pet, etc., a place, an annoying traffic situation?
Yeah, so we're going to give you guys a moment to kind of dig into the sensations. What does it sound like, feel like, smell like, taste like? All those things. Just jot it down. You don't have to write a poetic phrase. And then you can dig into the memories. Okay, what does it remind you of? What are you thinking of? Are you thinking of Hickory Farms at Cielo Vista Mall? All right, we're going to give you a moment to kind of dig in a little bit. Take a drink if you need one. Okay, now when you're ready, or you could just stop there, leave a space. You can always go back to it later. What would changing it feel like? I'm not saying you have to decide right now how to change it. That's a big question. How to change it's a big question. I'm asking you, if it changed, what would it feel like?
And then how is it magical or absurd, or how can you make it magical absurd if you want to?
All right, and then for the sake of time, I mean, we just kind of threw y'all through this process, but for the sake of time, you can feel free to take a picture of the questions if you want to. Do whatever you need to do, because we invite you to keep going when you get home and see what you come up with. Maybe you're a poet and you didn't know it. I guess it's also going to be on Twitch and YouTube, right? Yeah, all right. Okay, all right. So now that you put some words on the paper, we made you feel some things that might have been a little bit uncomfortable, all right? So this is what we do. After we dig into the discomfort of things, we want to clean it up because we don't want to be a depression of poets. Like, we want to be happy people. Thank you, Holly. Holly Hardy's in the audience today. She's a lovely poet, amazing local talent. Like Heidi was saying earlier, like, we want to be happy people. One of the reasons why we write is so we can get the garbage out so that we can heal, right? It's a process. And also at the same time, be a little subversive sometimes, make the comments that promote change, right? Enlighten people about what's going on, but doing it through our words. So, this is what we want you to do now. We want you to fold up your paper and put it in your pocket or your purse or your wallet. Come back to it later when you're ready. But for right now, you're going to take all that feeling, breathe it out, let it go. It's staying on the paper for tonight. Because the rest of the evening is for fun. All right, and thank you all very much.
I'm at the website www.heidikasa.com, and then up there's also my LinkedIn and Instagram if anybody wants to follow me there. And yeah, on my website, you can contact me there as well.
And I'm on Instagram at Kim_Denning_poetry. And if anybody's interested in my curanderismo work, you can also contact me there as well. I don't even know if my link tree is working, but I didn't feel like taking the link off the slide, so. All right.
All right, y'all, let's give them a round of applause. Now, we do have time for a few questions, if there are any, or if you want to sit in quiet reflection, that's okay too. But do we have any questions? All right.
Kim, please tell me about your T-shirt.
Oh, okay. So this says, what's more punk than the public library? And I bought it from the Friends of the, Mount Pleasant Library in Washington, D.C.? Yep. Yeah, so, go send them some love. Austin Public Library, I mean, we're waiting for the shirts. Come on. Yeah, because they also have them in Spanish, which is amazing.
All right, we're off to a good start. Little library love fashion tips into
That's
it.
right.
Any other questions? Let me put on my nerd goggles here. All right, perfect. Nah, we got to do this for the stream.
I found these writing prompts pretty like really fun. And I'm not like a writer, right? Like I work in a business like setting, so it's not my thing. But I'm a musician, and I've really have learned to like enjoy singing, and which has brought me down an avenue of wanting to like write lyrics. And I found these prompts like kind of got me thinking, you know. So I was wondering if you had any recommendations or resources or other books to kind of that have these kind of activities or whatnot, like something like that. Thank you.
So as Kim mentioned earlier, she talked about Holly Hardy, who is in the audience, and she is a local poet and teacher, and she might be a person you definitely want to talk to about this. I know that there's tons of prompt books out there, but there's also definitely a lot of prompt materials online. One of the things that Holly does specifically, which is why I wanted to mention her, is because she does a 30 poems in 30 days where it's prompts, and she also runs a service called Praxis Poetry, which is I think a once a week prompt. So if you're looking for more prompts like this, that would be a great place. And it's local, and you know, support local.
Yeah. Thank you, Holly, for passing out your card.
Excellent. I love the hustle. All right. So we're 2 for 2 on good questions. Did anybody have any other ones that we want to bring up? All right. I'll let you think about it for a moment, but in the meantime, I want to ask the speakers, are you ready for us to give you our collective nouns for the poets?
Yes, please. That
All
would
right.
be amazing.
All right. So if you have a suggestion for a collective noun for a group of poets, please let me know. I do believe I have a candidate over here.
An enunciation of poets.
Ooh, that's beautiful. An
Nicely done.
enunciation of poets. All right. Awesome.
Marvelous. Marvelous. All right. See one over here. What you got?
My first thought was an ennui of poets.
Oh, ennui.
But that's like depression, and you didn't like that one. So I would say,
Well, but ennui is French.
but it's more
So
it's
yeah.
more poetic,
Yeah,
right?
it's fancy. It's
There you
okay.
go.
Yeah,
Good.
sounds way better than depression.
Or my second one was an ambivalence of poets.
Yeah. Those are good. Thank you.